With the announcement of League Classic, we also learned something really interesting. Champion kits won't necessarily be locked to Season 3. Riot already confirmed that some champions, like Twisted Fate, won't be recreated exactly as they were back then, because they simply wouldn't feel classic enough. Which brings us to a very important question. As Alistar's biggest fans, what actually defines Classic Alistar? Because if Riot wants to recreate Classic League, we first need to decide which Classic Alistar we are actually talking about. Unlike champions like Kassadin, who are mostly remembered for that infamous 98% pick ban rate, Alistar doesn't have just one iconic era. In Season 4, he somehow managed to outperform even Kassadin, reaching an absolute 100% pick ban rate in professional play. As a top lane, building Trinity Force and Static Shiv, by the way. And for many, that was Classic Alistar. But that's only one chapter. Back in Season 2, he was the most banned champion in the game thanks to his insane roaming and tower pushing potential enabled by his old passive. And for others, that was another Classic Alistar. And if you go even further back to Season 1, we have Shushay winning MVP of the World Championship with AP Alistar mid. Across 4 games, he averaged a 5.42 KDA, including an unforgettable 11.06 performance against Pacific that earned him the tournament MVP. And for the OG players, that was Classic Alistar. You see the point I'm trying to make? Season 1 had one classic, Season 2 had another classic, Season 4 somehow had yet another classic. Alistar was everywhere. Support, mid, top, jungle, tank, bruiser, AP. Every era of what we now call Classic League had its own version of Alistar, and every generation of players has their Classic Alistar. So trying to pick a single moment and call it Classic Alistar is almost impossible. Whatever Riot chooses, for the majority that will not be the classic version. And honestly, that's what you'd expect from one of League original champions, when basically everyone had dual scalings or could build basically anything or go anywhere and still be functional. But for Alistar, it's different. He was probably the biggest example of this, and probably one of the most broken. Do you know how many times Riot had to remove entire mechanics from his kit just to make him less relevant? Not tweak numbers, not shave off a bit of damage, actually delete pieces of the champion. And all of that to make it just a support, and even with all they did to him, he remains a really solid pick in solo queue and is still very relevant in competitive. Riot never managed to kill the champion. Instead, over the years, they slowly removed almost every classic playstyle that wasn't support. Classic AP Alistar, Classic Bruiser Alistar, Classic Jungle Alistar. Let's take a look at everything we have lost. In patch 4.15, Riot removed what many Alistar players knew as the Sneak Punch. If you have never heard of it, don't worry, I got you covered. If you casted Headbutt and immediately right-click at your target during the dash, Alistar will perform what can only be described as a Bluetooth auto-attack. It was unavoidable, it landed before the knockback finished, and because the target was still stunned by Headbutt, they couldn't even trade back. That was the core mechanic for every non-support build. Bruiser Alistar used it to guarantee Trinity Force and Static Shiv procs. AP Alistar abused it with Leechbane. The loss of this classic mechanic is where player felt the most that I was not trying to adjust the playstyle, but remove it completely. Losing the Sneak Punch significantly weakened every damage-oriented playstyle the champion had. But apparently that still wasn't enough. In patch 5.16, Riot slowed down Headbutt's travel speed by almost half. That gave opponents much more time to react to the classic WQ combo, making engages far less reliable and much easier to flash or dash away from. Another hit that made Alistar less reliable. Then came the sustain nerfs. Across patch 6.3 and 6.6, the mana cost on his heal was nearly doubled, while his healing was reduced. Changes that will later be followed by the rework moving the heal onto his passive. With this, his laning phase took another huge hit, especially with the shift to the passive, case it made the heal less spammable and not cover the minions, removing the ability to make your enemy fail the last hit, which was a core part of what made Alistar the classic monster everyone loved and hated. Patch 6.10 targeted his ultimate. Unbreakable Will went from granting 70% damage reduction at every rank to 50, 60, 70%, making his early game significantly weaker and riskier. Every patch removed another piece of classic Alistar, but then patch 6.22 happened, the full rework. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually like the rework, the giant bonk on EC is incredibly satisfying, but it also came with one of the biggest losses in Alistar history. Riot completely removed the bonus attack damage from his ultimate. Yes, for those who never experienced it, activating Unbreakable Will didn't just make Alistar nearly impossible to kill, it also granted 50, 75 and 90 bonus AD. For comparison, Vayne's ultimate at the time only granted 30, 50 and 70 AD and was nerfed later on. So yes, I understand why Riot thought that maybe the giant unstoppable bull taking 70% less damage probably shouldn't also hit harder than the ADC. But removing it entirely erased yet another playstyle from the champion, the bruiser crit build that everyone remembers from Dyrus. And this is where classic Alistar died. Little by little, every one of those changes chipped away at Alistar's identity. Not because they made him weak, because as we said, support Alistar remains relevant. Hell, I will also say that he remains one of the most effective 2-in-1 engage and disengage support, if not champion, in League of Legends. The difference is that he used to be a champion you could pick for almost any role and build around in wildly different ways. Today is primarily a support with a few niche off-roles possibilities. So we are back to the original question, where Riot say that they're bringing back League Classic with the classic version of the champions. Which classic are they bringing back? Which classic Alistar? The AP mid that won World Wars 1? The AP mid that won Worlds in Season 1? The roaming monster from Season 2, the Trinity Force bruiser terrorizing top lane in Season 4, or do they go all the way back to pre-release Alistar with a 3-second stun AoE pulverize and a 16-second spell immune ultimate? Nah, I think we can exclude this one for sure. The real answer is that there isn't a single classic Alistar. Every era and every discovery of possibilities created another classic. What defines classic Alistar is not one particular kit, it was every absurd, overpowered, completely different version of the Minotaur that somehow existed over the years. And if Riot wants League Classic to feel authentic, at the question which classic bull do we bring back, the only possible answer is all of them.